Hi, my name is Ogeen, and I started watching Formula One in October of last year. And here's everything you need to know to start watching your first Formula One race. This is a beginner's guide for a beginner from a beginner. Formula One is one of the fastest motorsports on the planet, with cars going up to 200 to 300 miles per hour, which is the equivalent of going from 5 to 6 Gs. To put that into perspective, astronauts only experience 3 Gs during a rocket launch. Due to the speed and precision of these cars, not anyone can drive them. An F1 driver usually starts their career off as young as 4 years old. They start off with karting, and they work their way up through the ranks until they eventually get to Formula One racing. And each year, the FIA, which is the governing body for Formula One racing, allows a certain amount of teams to participate. Each team gets 2 drivers and a reserve driver. In 2025, there were 10 teams with 20 drivers. This year in 2026, there will be 11 teams with a total of 22 active drivers. Each team is allowed to have 2 active drivers per season, which means that there will only be 22 drivers that are allowed to drive Formula One cars this year in the whole world, because F1 is international. The F1 season usually takes place over the course of 24 weekends. We call those weekends race weekends. The season usually ranges from March to December with a few breaks in between. Drivers race around 24 circuits or racetracks all over the world in locations such as Canada, Brazil, Bahrain, Japan, and much more. Each track is built differently in order to challenge the driver's skills, driving techniques, and endurance. They are designed to keep things entertaining. Just because a car is fast doesn't mean that they'll do well in every track. And because all the tracks are so different, it means that just because you have the fastest car, it doesn't mean you'll do well on every single track. Having multiple different tracks keeps things interesting, not just for the driver, but for the viewer as well. Now, let's take a look at the cars. The name Formula One comes from a set of rules to dictate how the car is to be designed. It covers engine size, components that can be used, the size of the body, the engine weight, and everything in between. All teams must abide by these set of rules. Just because the rules are the same doesn't mean that every single car will be built the same. Teams will design their own cars, they'll come up with their own little tricks to get through loopholes to try to make the fastest car that they can. Outside of the rules, you can adjust the car however you would like, as long as it stays within regulations. The ones who set the regulations are the FIA. Because the regulations usually don't change frequently, teams have enough time to perfect their cars within the current regulations. The last time a regulation change was had before this year in 2026 was in 2022. So teams usually have a decent amount of time to build the fastest car within the current regulations. Now let's talk about the race weekend. The race weekend usually takes place over the course of 3 days. I'm not counting the media day that happens 1 day prior. I'm only talking about the days where the drivers are in their cars setting lap times. This 3 or 4 if you count the media day, but I'm only talking about 3 days, starts from Friday to Sunday. But in some countries, due to religious beliefs, they do not hold a race day on Sunday, so everything gets shifted 1 day forward. So instead of Friday to Sunday, it will be Thursday to Saturday. However, that also will happen depending on what time zone that you are in. Here in California, the Australian race and the Chinese race both happen on a Saturday for me. It gets confusing, but if you don't want to miss any of the action, you can actually sync an F1 calendar to the calendar on your phone, so that way you never miss any of the race days. Now here's an example of a race weekend schedule. The race weekend usually starts off with the drivers having practice rounds. These practice rounds are called free practice. So free practice rounds usually starts on the first day, which would be either a Friday or a Thursday, and usually they'll have 2 rounds on the first day, and then the next day they'll have the 3rd round. The reason why it's called a free practice session is because no matter what happens during these sessions, outside of like crashing or collisions, it will not count towards the race weekend or the championship. We'll talk more about the championship later on in this video. Nor will it affect the driver points. We'll talk about points later on in this video. The reason why drivers have practice round is because they're constantly moving from track to track to track. So when you get to a new track, you want to see how the car will handle that track. These rounds are to ensure that the cars are functioning properly and that they did not get damaged during transport. Let's talk about transport really quick. Because the F1 season is international, which is worldwide, the cars must be transported by land, by air, by sea to every single location that the race is held at. So there can be up to 3 practice rounds, and each practice round is about an hour long. During these rounds, drivers will test to see how much speed they can get out of each car. There's always like a chunk of time between each round. Each time you do a free practice round, there's time in between to adjust your car to make it the fastest, which means that after you finish a practice round, your team has the data to work on your car to make it faster if they can, to make any adjustments, to like fix any problems. So that way, when you get to qualifying, your car should be ready to go. And you're ready to just like go flat out. That's when they say flat out, it just means like really fast out the get-go, like boom, to go flat out and be the fastest driver on the grid and prepare for the upcoming qualifying session. So if you hear a reporter talking about FP1, FP2, FP3, as in this happened in FP1 or this happened in FP3, they're usually referring to these free practice sessions. I call them rounds, but I think technically they're called sessions. Most people will skip watching free practice unless they want to predict who's going to win or they have a fantasy team. It's me. I have a fantasy team. You can set up a fantasy team through the official Formula One app. It's just Formula and then the number 1, and you can find that in your app store. I'm not sponsored. Fantasy teams are just really fun for me. And it does not cost you any real money. So that's like a win-win. During Saturday afternoon or evening, depending on where you are in the world, is the qualifying session. Now, this is a time that the drivers put all of the work that they did during the practice round to work. During the practice round, drivers learn how to handle their cars on the particular track that they are on and told their teams any adjustment that needed to be made. So that way they can get the most speed out of their car. The reason qualifying is held is to see who is the fastest driver and places them on the track according to how fast the driver is. Drivers get placed from fastest to slowest in what is called a grid order. It's done so that way each driver can drive within their speed bracket. Because let's face it, it's funner to see fast cars racing each other the hardest they can than to watch slow drivers get dusted by fast drivers. Qualifying is usually held in 3 sessions. The first session is usually 18 minutes long. The next session is 15 minutes long, and the last session is 12 minutes long. We call these 3 sessions Q1, Q2, and Q3. Now let me take you through what a regular qualifying session looks like. For this example, I'll be using 20 drivers with 10 teams, just because it's easier to display visually. Now before I talk about this, you might wonder if 18 minutes is enough time to see if a driver is fast enough. And the answer is yes, because tracks are usually 2 to 5 miles long. It only takes a driver who is going at a speed of 200 miles per hour to get around a track in less than 2 minutes. And when a driver is going full on to get the fastest speed they can, it's called a flying lap. So after the first qualifying session, which we call Q1, the drivers are put in order from fastest to slowest, and the bottom 5 get eliminated. Since in 2026 we're going to be having 22 drivers, it will be the bottom 6 that get eliminated in Q1. And then we move on to Q2, which lasts for 15 minutes. And the same thing goes. The drivers do flying laps, as in they go as fast as they can, and the bottom 6 get eliminated, only leaving 10 drivers left. And then we get to the last session, which is Q3, which gives drivers 12 minutes. And at this point, nobody gets eliminated because there's only 10 drivers left, and that will be the top 10 for the race. So whatever position they finish in qualifying session 3 or Q3 will be their final placement during race day. The fastest driver in the Q3 session gets the first position, or as they call it in F1, the pole position. During the last few minutes of Q3, you will hear the reporters or commentators saying that this driver has provisional pole. That basically means that at the moment, right before everyone has finished doing their flying laps, which means their fastest lap, they will say, oh, this person looks like they're going to get pole position. And they will say provisional pole. And that means that they might get pole position, but that doesn't mean they have pole position. Sometimes they do make the right call and nobody else will be faster than that driver and that driver will get pole position. But that's just a fact you should know, a vocabulary word, if you will. So if they say provisional pole, that means this driver looks like they're going to get first place in qualifying. Not first place in the race, but first place in qualifying. So that way they can start in first position during the actual race. There's a lot going on, but as you watch it, it will make more sense. So let's talk more about pole position. Pole position, as I said, means that you are the fastest driver out of everybody else during qualifying. So you are the fastest of 20 or 22 drivers, however many drivers are on the grid. And usually that means that you have a really good position on race day to set you up to win the whole race. So most drivers can convert a pole position to a race win, which is why people will fight it out during qualifying and try to get the fastest. Because during qualifying, you're not actually racing anybody. You are just trying to be the fastest car to get from the start to finish in the fastest way. So you're not trying to race anybody. You're not fighting for positions. You're literally just trying to be the fastest. And during a flying lap, if you're doing a flying lap, every other car has to get out of your way. So that way it's fair. So you're not racing anyone during qualifying. You are literally just trying to go as fast as you can from start to finish to have the fastest time on the board. So that way you can be higher up on the grid order or even get pole position. Between qualifying and the actual race day, there is a period where you are not allowed to touch your car. No adjustments are to be made, no setups to be made. You're just not touching anything. And if there is an issue where you do need to touch the car so that way it will be ready for race day, you will get a grid penalty. So a lot of drivers get their gearboxes changed. If they change their gearbox during the closed period, then they can get a grid penalty. It could be a 5-place grid penalty. And if they're already in the back, they'll just start from the pit lane. The word they use for the time period between qualifying and the Grand Prix or the race day is called pack fermé. Anyways, it just means closed period or closed park, which means no touching the cars. Now let's say a driver has done all of their practice sessions. They've made all the setup changes to their car, all the adjustments that need to be made. They found out how to get the fastest lap time during the free practice rounds. And now they have gone into qualifying and they've gotten through every single qualifying session and made it all the way up to Q3, and they set a personal best for that track. Now they are in a great position to win the Grand Prix or the Grand Prix. It just means the grand prize or big prize in French. Oh, did I not mention that Formula One started in Paris, France in 1950? And then the British took it over, but we're not going to talk about that. The Grand Prix usually happens on a Saturday or the Sunday, the last day of the race weekend. And the Grand Prix usually lasts about 2 hours. During that time, drivers will do what is called a formation lap. Drivers will get their car placed on the grid, and then from there, they will do a formation lap. A formation lap is usually just them warming up their tires by going around the track or the circuit one time. The words track and circuit are used interchangeably. You can use whichever one you want. Everyone will know what you're talking about. So the drivers go through a formation lap to warm up their tires. So if you see them zigzagging, they're warming up their tires. The reason they warm up their tires is because the hotter your tires are, the faster your car will go because it will have more grip. We're not gonna get into technical things, but that's why they do the zigzag on the formation lap before the actual race starts. You will know a race starts when the lights start lighting up. So there will be red lights that light up. It will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You don't go on 5. You go when all the lights go off. And then the rest is up to the commentators. I'm not even gonna talk about the Grand Prix because you just need to watch it. And it is so good. Even as a beginner, you can get into it because the commentators will just tell you everything that's going on. If you don't understand why something happened, they'll just tell you. It's like they know. It's like they know you don't know anything and they just start telling you information, and they'll even define words or explain what they mean. They're really beginner friendly. Okay, Now let's talk about the sprint, because technically the sprint doesn't happen every single race weekend. It only happens 6 times out of the year. It's usually spread out throughout the season. And so usually the first sprint will happen within the second race of the season. At least it's been that way for the races that I've watched. I've watched a little bit of 2016. I watched the beginning of 2025. And usually a sprint happens during the China race, which has been the second race for at least the 2 seasons that I've seen. So let's get into the sprint. So the sprint happens after FP1. Do you remember what FP1 means? So if you hear a reporter or anyone talking about FP, then they're talking about one of the free practice rounds. Yes, free practice one. Am I a kid show? So when it is a sprint weekend, which means a weekend that the sprint is happening, only FP1 will happen and FP2 and FP3 will not happen. And the reason for that is because you need a qualifying session for the sprint. So they'll do FP1, then they'll do sprint qualifying, then they'll do the actual sprint, and then they'll do qualifying for the race day, and then they'll do the Grand Prix. Got it? Got it? So how does the sprint differ from a Grand Prix? I'm glad you asked. So basically a sprint is a shorter race. It's usually around 19 to 20 laps long, usually like a third of like an actual race day. It doesn't last as long as a race usually does. A Grand Prix lasts around 2 hours, an hour and 30 minutes. So if you're doing a sprint, it can last up to an hour. The reason the sprint race was added was so that way it can be more palatable to new fans. So it was a way for F1 to appeal to people who are curious about racing but don't want to sit through a 2-hour race. So the sprint, it was like a little baby race, a little introduction, if you will, to introduce a fan to Formula One. And I just think that the other reason is just that drivers can earn more points that way. Remember I said I was going to talk about points later on in the video? Well, it's not later yet. So basically, a sprint qualifying session is the same as a regular qualifying session. Instead of the top 10 being important, it's usually the top 8. Because when a driver finishes a sprint race, only the top 8 gets rewarded points. Now we can talk about points. So drivers can earn points through every Grand Prix that they do. So that's like a total of 24 Grand Prix. And the top 10 drivers earn points, depending on what position they finish in. So whoever finishes in the first position will get 25 points. Whoever finishes in second position will get 18 points. Whoever finishes in the third position will get 15 points. So the top 10 drivers in a regular race and the top 8 drivers in a sprint race. Whoever has the most points at the end of the season, so at the end of all the 24 races and the 6 sprints, will win the World Drivers' Championship trophy. So after each race, a driver will get a trophy for finishing that race if they finished in first place. However, just because you have a trophy doesn't mean that you'll automatically win the World Driver Championship. At the end of a race, if you finish within the top 3, you get to go to podium. And during podium, you get to get a trophy, you get to stand on a podium, there's champagne. Usually drivers will spray each other with champagne. You've seen the pictures, you've seen the videos, you've seen the memes, maybe you haven't. I saw nothing before I started watching Formula One. I didn't know anything. But here we are, learning things together. Podium is usually a really fun time, unless a driver is mad. If a driver is mad that they didn't win, they will just be like grumpy. They'll stand off to the side. During podium, when everyone's like spraying each other with champagne, they'll just like hand their bottle to somebody. They'll just like stand there, grumpy, like this. It's like they're reliving the race in their head. Usually during podium, you will see another person standing up there on the podium with the drivers. Usually they'll be on a separate podium off to the side. And that is usually the person who is part of the team who won first place. Every point that a driver gets during the race gets allocated to their team after every Grand Prix and after every sprint. And this will be both of the active drivers. So if one driver got 15 points and another driver got 10 points, then the points that are allocated to the team will be 25 points. And at the end of the season, the team with the most points gets the Constructor Championship. Constructor is the word that they use for team in F1. They also get a cash prize along with their trophy. Anyways, if none of what I've said has convinced you to watch F1, then do it for the drama. Because this is a sport where only 20 to 22 men race every year. Only 22 drivers can enter the Formula One Championship, which is one of the fastest motorsports in the world. The drama we are talking about is drivers purposely crashing into each other, their teammates racing each other all out, there's teams, even teams sabotaging their own drivers. Allegedly, nobody comes out of F1 unscathed. Tensions are high, stakes are high, and the speed is even higher. All of this to be number one. That's all for this video. I hope you found this informative. I hope that you are kind to me in the comments. This video was kind of like a hodgepodge of like information put together. If it was hard to follow, I will try to make an updated one as time goes on. The more I learn, the more you'll learn. We'll just learn everything together. I'm also planning to do Formula One chats, basically just doing a recap of every race day and just like chatting with you guys and just feeling feelings together, basically. Feeling feelings together, because I will tell you, at the end of 2025, I had a lot of feeling. It's okay if you're new. I will catch you up with all the race recaps. I'll just tell you the things I noted from every race. I'll be covering free practice all the way to race day, and I'll just give you a recap of it. And that way, neither of us misses anything. If there is anything that you would like me to elaborate on, put it down below. Let me know in the comments. So stick around for race recap content from your beginner F1 fan. Ogin, it's me. I'm the beginner F1 fan.